attend to, and quite a number of things we have been talking about throughout the course of the day, but we still have more to break down. Now, how many of you have actually sat down patiently and quietly over the years to listen to a president present a budget for the year? Well, I think the first budget speech I listened to was probably way back, President Ibrahim Babangida, and that was in the late 80s. That's when I was old enough to understand what a budget presentation was, and that used to happen on the 1st of January of any chosen year. Well, things have changed since then. We have the political dispensation that came along, and we got knocked off of those habits. The current president, Muhammadu Buhari, has been trying to get that back on track. And so, in the hopes of meeting that target, he made a presentation of the 2023 budget. But even before this budget is finally settled, Budget 2023 seems to be anchored on shaky ground. Now, apart from the embedded deficit in the budget of about 10.9 trillion in the 20.5 trillion budget, fuel subsidy outlay that is predicted to hit about 6.4 trillion. Now, that's a huge amount of money. Now, our production of crude has been dropping. And recently, we found out that crude oil had been stolen on an industrial scale in the country. Now, to cement its irrelevance to driving development, the budget is short on capital spending and replete with the usual wastes, luxuries to a few, and repetitive carryovers from previous years. Now, this is one of the things that has always bothered me, that we have line items in our budget that, people generally seem to just repeat, you see those line items every single year. If there are computers to be bought, those computers make their way into the following year's budget. So sadly, despite the strong headwinds against the economy and the shrinking revenues, the current administration is yet to imbibe the imperative of deploying budgets as effective instruments for development. So experts say that a government budget is the principal instrument for fiscal policy that is supposed to be used to encourage stable growth, sustainable development, and prosperity. It's supposed to be a comprehensive document that outlines what economic and associated activities a government plans to undertake, with a special focus on policies, objectives, and strategies for accomplishments that are backed by revenue and expenditure projections. But over the years, our budgets have just not done this. They've not delivered the progress that we have needed for such a long time. So what is it that we can do about this? How can we actually prevent ourselves from experiencing wastes from our budget? Now, billions of naira generally go away on non-essentials, despite the planned implementation of the Steve Oronsaya report on restructuring and rationalization of the federal ministries, departments, and agencies. Over 206 billion will be allocated to some of the agencies that were recommended for scrapping in that report. Now, no fewer than 36 of such agencies had huge allocations, mainly for personnel costs. And that is not even to add to some of our moribund agencies and organizations that we pay. They don't produce anything, including our refineries, don't produce anything, and yet we have to pay the salaries of the staff that work for such organizations. Now, in the face of a major deficit in the country, the question is, how are we actually going to curb waste in our national budget? How do we prevent monies being spent on frivolities and things that don't really matter, things that will not move our economy forward? How do we plan to spend better? Now, joining us for this conversation is Adakole Ijogi. He's a political economist. He joins us via telephone all the way from Jos. Hello, Adakole. Are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line. Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning. It's great to speak with you.
Good to speak to you.
So I think that there are some of the critical aspects of the budgets that we have to look at, but I want to start from the Oronsai report. In my introduction, I talked about over 200 billion that would be allocated to ministries that report had recommended should either be scrapped or merged with others. So, from your perspective as a development economist, what do you think is holding us up? Why haven't we done this?
Well, Stanley, once again, good morning and thank you for having me. Let me start by saying that the efficiency and effectiveness of public service determines how far a country or a government can go. Public service, the efficiency and effectiveness of public service is what drives government's program. Now, if you have a public service that is ineffective and inefficient, what you have is a multitude of wastages and leakages in the system. Now, this is aside the purported corruption that you and I know exists within the system. Now, answering your question directly with regards to the Oronsai report, I think that it is the simple question of who we bail the cat. That you have a civil service that is slightly over bloated. You have a civil service, a public service that you have agencies and departments of government that do similar things. But then there's this question now of how will you implement that report without getting a backlash from the unions?
Mm-hmm. Because the moment you mention, for instance, we complain that our civil service is overbloated and it consumes a great percentage of the amount of money that we earn, to the point that we actually have to borrow to support the civil service. And yet, whenever we talk about rationalization or reducing the size of the civil service, the trade unions pretty much hold us to hostage.
Yes, they do. And I think that for me, we need to just be very bold and practical. Well, while I have argued over the years that the problem with recurrent expenditure, which is cost of running government, recurrent expenditure in the budgeting cycle of Nigeria, or budgeting system in Nigeria, is not that it is over bloated, especially when you do peer review of how much other countries similar to our population and size spend on running government. Now, the peculiar issue with the Nigerian budget is the size of our budget. Now, if you see how much that is spent on recurrent, is about on this the budget of
2023.
2023. I think it's just slightly above 6 trillion naira. Now, if you take 6 trillion naira and you do a percentage of the budget that is essentially 20 trillion, you see how much we are spending on running governments. So you see, for me, I think that what needs to be done, like I said, we need to be bold and practical. We need to restructure the budget. The way the Nigerian budget...
but Adakole, I hear you, and you asked the all-important question earlier, who will bail the cat? Because there's a political cost to this. Any administration that would want to do that. We saw what happened in Kaduna State when Governor Nasir El-Rufai, just put some teachers out of work, and we saw the backlash against that. As a matter of fact, even the National Labor Union got involved in that particular situation. So anybody who is a president or a governor is mindful of that. And there is that temptation to say, look, I don't want to tamper with this, because once they do, they will halt my government, they will spoil my name, I will look inefficient, and so therefore I will just do the best I can, plug the gaps, and then leave the problem to be solved by another administration. This is what has been happening for the past 20, maybe 30 years.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. That's what has been happening, because I wish the military had the courage. I mean, it would have been easier during the military juntas, the military dictatorships. But now we're in a democracy. You now have very strong unions. You now have political costs, like you mentioned. You now have administrative exigencies. So it is not that it cannot be done, but you see the backlash, as politicians will say, is better to be politically correct, because the politician is always thinking about the next election. And by and large, when you look at, I think it will be even easier to be done at the subnationals, as in the states and the local government, than at the federal, because the federal is very structured and more organized. I think that the state government, just like what Nasir El-Rufai tried to do in Kaduna State, I think that it will be easier to say that, to reduce the cost of governance in the states by any governor that is serious, by engaging the people, engaging the unions, and saying, look at this. This is what it costs. This is what the state earns in IGR. This is what we earn in federal allocation. And this is what we spend in running government. That it is not sustainable. We need to boost up capital the capital side of the budget. I think it would be easier to be done in the states.
Yeah, well, in theory, that would be easier. But do you know where the problem is? Transparency. Now, if the current problem is used as a smoke screen, it will be difficult for the government to now say, oh, well, trade unions, look, here are the real figures of everything, because now people will begin to look at details. And once people look at details, they will say, oh, well, why are you spending this on this? Why are you spending this on that? So unless we have a culture of transparency in governance and accountability, this is going to be difficult, isn't it?
Yes, so I agree with you. I agree with you that most state governments, subnationals, they run a very cloak and dagger administration with regards to how they deploy finances. We have very, very, very dangerous and suspicious things like Commissioner for Chieftaincy and Local Government, where the local government and state joint account is, you never know what is happening in those areas. I mean, they're just a conduit pipe for the governors and things like security votes and all of that. But you see, if the issue is about governance, effective governance, the delivery of development, attaching governance and democracy to development, I think that the issue on transparency and accountability shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem, honestly.
All right. Well, let's look at some of the issues that were raised by the Oronsaye report, and that is the one concerning the merger of some institutions that seem to be doing similar work. There's a reason why these agencies exist in the first place. Whether or not our response to these challenges was the right course of action originally, I don't know. But I think, for example, let's take policing. We have, in the area of policing, we have the police itself, we have the Federal Road Safety Corps, we have the VIOs, we have the NSCDC. Now, there are some people who say all these are different factions or different aspects of policing, and these agencies and organizations should be departments under the police force. But they exist because of the inefficiencies in policing in Nigeria, and perhaps also that the perception of the police over the years as being corrupt has continued to increase and get, worsened over, So how do you even begin to tackle such an issue if you wanted to reduce waste? I can see the virtue of the idea of collapsing these organizations. But when we look at our Nigerian realities, it may not be as simple as people would like to think it is.
Well, That's a very interesting question, Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start by saying that the police structure that we inherited from our colonial master is something that we have not changed. If you look at the symbol of the police, is an elephant. The symbol of the police force. And why is it a force? The colonialists set up a policing that was repressive, that was to quell rebellion, that was to do their bidding and guard them from possible insurrections and protests.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we got back our country in 1960, I thought that the police should have been restructured to actual policing, crime prevention, crime detection, and maintenance of law and order. But the way the police is even structured right now, you know that these three key things are not what it is structured to do. So with successive military administrations in Nigeria after 1966, they weakened the base of the police because of the so-called participation of a police commissioner of 1970, in the 70s, of Benue Plateau in a coup. So successive
and shockingly, a lot of Nigerians may not know this, but the police were among the most efficient organization to detect if the sitting government was under threat, if a coup was going to take place.
Yes.
The Inspector General of Police would be one of the first persons to know about this. This is how efficient and effective our police used to be.
Police have outposts deep. They have department states in every nook and cranny in the country. So they gather intelligence. So I think that each successive administration, in trying to deal with the issue of policing, because if you look at the Wilkins report of 1956, I'm sorry I'm taking you back because I like to lay the background, you will see that policing was part of the major debating problem, issue, challenge. Should we have a federal police? Should we have one police? Should we have different levels, native authorities? And it was agreed that back then that you should have one policing system, which I think because in the colonial administration they had native policing authorities, but at the dawn of independence they shifted that we should have one policing, which I think was a bad idea. But anyways, now in trying to
this started with the Gobir panel sometime in 1966, which recommended a single police force and collapsed the native authorities and made one unified police force. And it was based on General Aguiyi Ironsi's preference for a unitary system, and ultimately adopted by General Yakubu Gowon when he became head of state.
Well, that was a bad idea. I think it was a bad idea. Because we are a federation. We are not a unitary state. We are a federation. And you had state subnationals that had a federating unit. So you can't afford to have one policing system. That's why you have this level of insecurity that we have never seen before in our nation's history. It is because of that one single policing system.
But just so that we don't stray into a conversation about the police, it comes down to money now, because the police became inefficient in many ways. So we had to create the NSCDC. We had to create the Federal Road Safety Corps to solve that problem. But the solution to that problem came at great costs, as we can see what we're paying for. Even our choice of bicameral legislation comes at a great cost to us. Our democracy is expensive, isn't it?
Yes. Democracy is expensive all over the world. It's expensive, and the different levels of policing that you have in NCDs and what you call it, road safety, VIO,
NSCDC. I kept saying NCDC. My apologies, NSCDC.
Yes, I think that we are just duplicating functions, and the danger in that is that it increases overheads. You know, that's
that was the cost. Yeah.
Yes, that's running costs.
All right, let me move you to another critical area right before we open up the headlines. The allocation for 10 presidential aircraft, 508 million for foodstuff and refreshments for the presidency when many Nigerians are starving. And a lot of people are wondering, at the dawn of the administration, we thought we were going to have fewer planes, a fewer presidential fleet. That hasn't happened.
Well, I think that what has bedeviled this particular administration is lack of honesty.
A smaller fleet, rather.
Lack of honesty, lack of sincerity, and just taking Nigerians for a ride. I think that yes, we have to fund the presidency, but the level of repeated items in the budget, we need a serious government that can do a line-by-line elimination of the budget. I have said this, and the National Assembly is not, we have a rubber stamp National Assembly, they're not even helping matters. Just like you mentioned at the beginning of the intro, have purchase of computers in the previous budget, the same purchase of computers will still be in the next budget, and like that. I think that they have not just been able to depart from propaganda, half-truths and lies. They came in 2015, they were talking about, remember, they said zero budgeting system. They said they were taking all manner of fancy names. Meanwhile, nothing has changed.
Well, the balanced budget will probably take quite a while to achieve in Nigeria because, of the way in which our budgets are even generated in the first place.
No, it doesn't. It is not rocket science, Stanley. It's a simple thing to do. It's to go like Barack Obama did. William Ruto in Kenya. If I say Barack Obama, it's US. Ruto in Kenya is doing it now. You take it seriously, line by line. It is not telling ministries, departments, and agencies of government to come and submit their budget proposals, and then you lump everything and then take to the National Assembly. No. You look at it line by line, compare it to the previous budget, and like I said in the beginning of this program, that the efficiency and effectiveness of public administration will direct how far the government can go, or the successes of the administration, because it is public service. You need the public service to be efficient and to be effective, because they are the ones that implement government policies.
All right, well, we'll have to take a break now, but Dakole, please stay on the line, because when we come back, I would like us to have a look at our budgeting systems, the processes in themselves, and how we can make them more effective. And then we'll open up the lines and hear what Abuja has to say. So don't go away. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Citizen FM 93.7, and you're listening to the Super Citizen at Sunrise. And we've been talking about how to reduce waste in our budget, a major challenge for every government. But Adakole Ijogi, who is a political economist and also my guest today, says, who will bell the cat? Who is going to take it as a challenge? Who is going to go out there and say, let us do this. Let us implement some of those critical things that may be politically costly, but ultimately would be good for the country. I guess that is what political will is all about. Quite a number of you have been wanting to get in on this conversation. We'll go ahead and open up the lines now, even as we continue to, unfold and unpack the issues connected to our budget. I want to talk about the procedures. Adakole, you're still there?
Yes, I'm here, Stanley.
All right, great. So please call us on 0903 2229 797 or 0808 2222 037, or you could also call 0818 22 22 205, and we would be very happy to get your perspectives as to how you think. Well, what are the issues connected to the Nigerian budgeting system? What are some of the organizations that you think that we should scrap or merge? What are those things, those habits, those bad habits that we have that continue to bloat our budget to the point that, well, our deficits keep on growing? I would love to hear from you. So I was talking about the budgeting process, and I promised that we were going to talk about this, and maybe the corruption that permeates throughout the system. Now we have the agencies, the ministries, departments, and agencies who go and set up their budgets. We have the budget defense, but you know what we've been hearing in the media for such a long time is there is a lot of back end dealing that goes on where maybe people in the executive arm of government are approached by people in the legislature and say, okay, if you want us to approve this for you, you would have to pack up the budget in a certain way or pad it up in a certain way. Well, if this kind of thing is going on, is it possible to curb waste? Because this is an invitation to have a very cumbersome budget year on year.
Well, Stanley, before we even get to the budgeting process, like I was trying to mention earlier, the structure of the Nigerian budget is defective. When I mean the structure of the budget, if you look at the total budget size as a percentage of the GDP, and you peer review that with other countries like Nigeria, you know that our budget size to GDP is just in the region of about 6%. And in other countries, like in Kenya, like in South Africa, like in Egypt, it's about 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, some even 40%. The structure of the Nigerian budget is defective, and the way our budget is structured, it cannot engender any form of development. And then secondly, when you look at the content of the budget, look at the 2023 budget proposals. You have about 6.7 trillion naira for subsidy. You have about 6.5 trillion naira for debt servicing, and the budget is about 20 trillion. So if you add 6.7 and 6.5, you are looking over how much is left to run for capital and recurrent. And recurrent is about 5 trillion. So how much is it that is left for capital projects? That is construction of roads, infrastructure, and stuff like that. And you see, economists like myself, when we talk about the structure of the budget and the contents and the line by line arrangements in the budget, a budget cannot exist on its own. Now, we are discussing the budget, but Stanley, kindly allow me to draw your attention to the value of the currency. Now, the value of the currency is also a major issue, because if you have a 20 trillion budget that is hinged on a government price of exchange rate on 435 naira to the dollar,
and that's the official rate.
Yes,
which may not be the true value of the naira according to market forces.
Well, I will not say the true value. I'll just say at the parallel market, because since we departed from the gold standard age in '73, led by the US and other countries, we do what we call fiat money, fiat placement of money. And fiat is a Latin word for as it is. But anyways, that's not what we're discussing now. What I'm trying to draw attention to is the value of the currency. That if you have that 20 trillion budget and the naira keeps depreciating, you will not have the value. You will not have to go back to the National Assembly for supplementary budgets and all of that. The money that they have allocated now is 6.7 trillion for subsidies in 2023. But I bet you that 6.7 trillion will not be enough.
You raise a very
very
interesting point when we're talking about the value of the naira, which also is our budget actually growing or is it shrinking? Because
it is shrinking.
If we had a 6 trillion naira budget
in 2015,
if we had a 6 trillion in 2015 at 190 to the dollar, and we have a 20 trillion at 800 to the dollar, it means that we probably spent more in 2015 than we're spending in 2022.
Of course we did, because we're not paying critical attention to the value of the currency. This particular administration has completely mismanaged the naira and the economy. And like I said in another forum, the incoming administration in 2023, we have to grow the GDP of Nigeria over 12% for 48 consecutive quarters. After that, we have to even rebase the naira. We have to halt inflation. Well, look, it is just so much to be done.
But we can't halt inflation. We can only reduce it, but the natural trajectory is inflation will continue to happen.
Definitely halt inflation, Stanley. We know how to do it. As economists, you can. You can halt inflation by ramping up production, by having stable fiscal and monetary policies, by not monkeying around with the live wire of the Nigerian economy, which is the petrol, the price of petrol. Because once you don't come clean with the price of petrol, it has a multiplier effect right down to every other thing. You can halt inflation by not monkeying around multiple exchange rates. Even for those going to Hajj, they have a different exchange rate.
Yeah, but let's be honest about the Nigerian exchange rate. It's not that easy. You can't, to borrow your word, fiat, just decide that there will be a single exchange rate.
You can.
How?
We know how to.
I mean, essentially, it means that for you to get the dollar at the bank rate, it implies that the naira is being subsidized. For you to get it at the bank rate, and if you look at the parallel market, it's as if the naira is being inflated.
Do you know on your naira
it's hyper.
You cannot spend more than $5 right now. Do you know that? On your naira card, in this global economy that we run, you can't spend more than $5 in a day. Do you know that?
So what do you do if you want to have a single exchange rate?
It's a simple thing, like I said, physical, predictable macroeconomic and physical policies. It's a simple thing to do. It's not like as simple as this. It's that other countries have done it. You cannot have exchange and then you reduce the dollarization of the Nigerian economy. You try as much as possible to get other nations to pay you to demand your naira.
Okay. Yes. Well, I want to ask you a question about that. I want to take you up on that. But first of all, just a reminder of the lines 0903 2222 2229. Let me take that again. 0903 2229 797 or 0808 2222 073. You could also call us on 0818 2222 205. Is it possible? Now, Adakole, you talk about reduction of the dollarization of the naira, but let's face it, a lot of what we consume is imported.
Yes.
How do you reduce the dollarization of the naira if most of what we consume comes from other countries?
That's why I say it is not. There's no silver bullet. There are different models. Well, Nigeria also exports. We export to most Africa, increase exports to African countries, and we ask them to pay us in Nigerian naira. It's not rocket science. Because it's a function of the money supply is a function of demand and supply, the value of a currency. Now you insist that you pay in denominated naira, just like what Russia is doing now. You can't buy Russian crude or Russian gas in dollars. You have to buy in Russian rupees. I mean, we live in a global economy right now. This arrangement that either the Chinese, or the Americans want to suffocate others developing the economy and put us in debt and in poverty. We should wake up.
But here's the challenge here.
In Africa.
No, but here's the challenge here, and this connects to the advantage of having a low currency. If we have, let's quickly take this call and then I'll make my point. This is coming from John David. Hello, John David.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Welcome back from Asokoro.
All right, please go ahead.
Good morning, James.
Adakole, he's saying good morning to you. Can you hear him?
Good morning. Good morning, John David. Good morning.
Yes, I just want to comment on the issue of Naira and dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Except we start producing. Once we produce, we can sell it out. Then we export. And when we export, people are buying. When they want to buy, they will buy in our currency. They will come and buy. And when they are coming to buy, that is where we gain the Naira value. But we depend on so many things. There are some things that we're supposed to produce in our country so that the foreigner will come and buy. We too, our Naira will get. But we are only depending. How can our Naira appreciate? The only way is that when we start producing and we start selling our product, that is where our Naira will gain our glory. If not, we are still going back. Then thank you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, John David. I appreciate your intervention. But I was talking about, okay, let's ask ourselves one fundamental question. What is the true advantage of having a Naira equivalent to the dollar?
No,
it's of advantage to us if we are importers.
No, it is not.
But if we are net exporters, then a low Naira could be of advantage because it means that we will have a lot of foreign currency coming in, and we can produce at a lower rate, right?
Don't follow this politician to say you want to make 1 Naira.
No, it's a great. Okay, well, hang on. We have another call coming in. Let's take that. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Okay, I think we lost that call. Please go ahead.
I said, don't follow these politicians to be saying 1 Naira to $1. That is not what.
No, I'm not saying 1 Naira to $1. I am saying, for instance, you look at China, right? And China actually prefers a lower currency because labor is cheap in China. But let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Could you tell us your name, where you're calling from, and go ahead with your comment? Mm-hmm. Oh, Patrick. Okay, Patrick, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Adokole. Yeah, mine is just a question. I have 2 questions for Mr. Adokole.
Mm-hmm.
Can Nigeria economy do without the US dollar? Because the reason why I ask this question is, as somebody that is doing business in Nigeria, you need to import some goods from China. Mm-hmm. So if you ask your suppliers from China that you want to pay in Naira, we didn't even take it serious. So they will demand their payment in dollars. So can we do without the US dollar? So secondly, I want to ask him, what does he think this administration is doing wrong, that the economy is this bad? So what are they doing wrong? Okay. And finally, what is the solution he can prefer, the quick solution? Even though I know that the solution is a long-term solution, but the one that will reduce the hardship.
The low-hanging fruits. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think those are very good questions. Most importantly, okay, can we do without the dollar? Adakole.
Hello? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
He was asking, can we do without the dollar?
Well, we can't.
In our international trade. And what is the implication of that?
We can't to an extent. Because if you check the trade that we do with the American people, it's just about 7%. It's less than 10%. The trade that we do with the Americans is about 7%. We do more business with China, Russia, UK, international trade and exchange. Now, the trouble is that the issue or the challenge here is that the Americans have so dominated international trade, and every dealings is denominated in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge that we have. Now, Russia is trying to break that. China has already broken that. Like I was trying to say, Nigeria has the largest economy in Africa. They need us. So we should try to get other African countries to start buying our product. I was happy with the other caller. Yes, we have to ramp up production and export. When you ramp up production, you ramp up export. You reduce imports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was to my point. If we're going to export, because just a moment, so that you can answer my question. The advantage, one of the advantages that China enjoyed over the years, and one of the things that helped China to economically evolve very rapidly, was cheap labor. They have a large population and they have a skilled population. And so it was very difficult, perhaps even impossible, for the American worker. Let's say you have somebody who makes a microchip in the US. You probably have to pay him $3,000 every month. For someone in China who's doing the exact same thing in the exact same quality, you probably have to pay him $500 every month. So the US could not match China's quality. Nigeria is where you find a lot of cheap labor. So if our population being 200 million, if we have a lot of young people and we can produce very cheaply, then a lower naira just might be advantageous to us only if we can stop importing. Because the reason why the low naira is stinging us is because we're so dependent on importation that we always have to chase the dollar. But if the dollar is chasing us, if the dollar is chasing our products, then it wouldn't matter the value of the naira, wouldn't it? As an economist, could you answer me that?
Yeah, it's not the dollar, it is the product chasing the naira, not the dollar chasing the product. If it is the product chasing the naira, Stanley, to answer the question directly, the reason for a currency, a legal tender, is that it does two things. It is a store of value and a means of exchange.
Okay.
Now, if that legal tender, that currency does not store value, the value is not predictable, then you have challenges, then you have issues. That is why everybody's going crazy about the dollar, because the dollar is static.
Okay. Well, I would like you to answer the other two questions, but again, let me go back to China. China also has the what do you call this? The renminbi and the yen. So, what if we had something like that we had a denomination that helps us store our value, and then another one within which we can trade?
I don't believe in cut and paste or copycat.
Okay.
Just do what works for you.
What works for us?
Yes, we should do what works for us. And it is a simple thing. I have said it over and over and over again, that if I have the opportunity to be in government, because I don't think that when we economists, when we talk about the value of a currency, we usually talk about the purchasing power parity. We usually talk about so many other economic jargons. But I think that actually, when we talk about the value of the currency, because the world now runs on this fiat money, I think it is unfair, it is unjust. I don't understand why my 800 units of my currency should be exchanging for your own one unit of your own currency when you don't actually have any natural resource.
Okay, let's get back to those questions that were asked. He asked, how did we get it so wrong over the last 4 or 5 years? Where we've ended up with this hyperinflation, the depreciation of the naira.
It is mismanagement of the economy. It is mismanagement of fiscal policies, mismanagement of monetary policy. It is mismanagement
in what way? In what way? Where? What are the specific incidents where we didn't get it right?
I asked you, Stanley, I said, do you know that you cannot spend more than $5 on your card, on your naira card? In a global economy, you can't spend more than $5 on your global card. Secondly, you have been toying around with the life wire of the Nigerian economy. They've increased pump price. This administration have increased pump price of petrol 3 times. They've actually even removed subsidy. But you see, Nigerians...
Well, many would argue with you because the IPMAN is saying that they can't work with a price tag of 169. So the subsidy, to all intents and purposes, is still there.
They have removed subsidy. PDP left it at 87 naira. The thing jumped to 100 and something.
No, but it's still there. I mean, if we are to really look at it, the going price of petrol would be more than 200 naira. The landing cost, according to IPMAN, is about 196.
Stanley, listen to me. They have removed subsidy. The issue is that nobody wants to come out and say the truth. The truth is that this commodity is denominated in dollars, and the naira has been fluctuating.
No, precisely, but this is my point. You can't say that subsidy has been removed when the official pump price, the official pump price is still
something naira. You say you haven't removed subsidy.
No, that's just a price increase, because a removal of subsidy effectively means that there is no price cap. And right now, the going price, the minimum price that petrol can be sold for with the current realities is maybe 200 plus. But we're still doing an official rate of about 190 something, which means that there is still a price cap.
They remove subsidy on one hand and they try to regulate it. There's a difference between liberalization and subsidy removal.
Okay.
As they removed subsidy by increasing the price of pump price of fuel by over 197% when they did it. All they needed to have done that time was allow market forces fix the price. You cannot sell petrol the same amount in 50 naira in Lagos as 50 naira in Maiduguri. That is where the subsidy coming.
Okay, very quickly, 30 seconds, low-hanging fruits. What can we do very quickly to improve our economy?
We should vote in. There's nothing. I'll go straight to the point.
No, I will stop you right there. We will not go. We will. No, but we will talk to me as an economist. What do we do? What are the policies?
This
not
is
personalities.
finishing in 6 months. Vote in a correct administration that understands how to manage the economy. Seriously.
No, well, I actually would insist on having a policy statement.
A policy statement?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Low-hanging fruit. What needs to be done?
Fix the economy.
Okay. Because we are out of time, I will accept that. Thank you very much, Adakole, for taking the time to talk with me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. I would also like to thank the entire team for contributing to the success of this program. Thanks to Fred for keeping me organized. Thanks also to everyone, Michelle, the engineers, and to all of you who listened to this program. Have a lovely day, Abuja, wherever you are.